we're now recording, and we have like 1 minute to kind of stare awkwardly at each other. And then we're gonna start in just, I think it's like 49 seconds.
Nice.
Started, so we can start. Oh, there we go. It's 6 on the nose.
All right, there we go.
5 seconds of silence. Hello and greetings to each of you in your respective places. I am hoping that whatever it is that you're doing at the current moment is bringing you some type of joy. If it's not, shame on you. You should be strong enough to speak up and have your voice heard in regards to what it is that you really want. But why is it so difficult that many of us find it hard to say what we want to say? I mean, what we really, really want to say, not camouflaging, not diluting, and as the new trend says, not dimming your light. Well, oftentimes, it's due to a number of different strategies and reasons, whether we're in our professional setting or in a personal setting. Many of us can find ourselves challenged by using our voice, lifting our voice, and having it heard. And this can go in so many ways in our lives. If you just stop, press pause, I bet it happened even today. I know for me it did. Well, I am absolutely excited that we're going to dive deeper into this conversation with an amazing guest. I am absolutely just delighted to have her, Eliza VanCort, a dear friend who, like a sister, we have just built this amazing connection over the years, and I'm going to bring more about who she is in just a moment. I want to welcome you who are new to this platform. You're listening to Conversations in the Nick of Time. I am your host, Nikki Roach. Show is powered by Sparkman Pathway to Careers and also KSTL 690 here headquartered in St. Louis, Missouri, but heard worldwide. This platform, Conversations in the Nick of Time, is just that, conversations to help you right where you are in this moment to get you to the next. And with that, we talk about and expose leadership, everything about leadership, and that's excellence and accidents. And you know that we all have both, excellence and accidents. Well, here to help us not straddle the fence so much when it comes to excellence and accidents, when it comes to communication, we have the most beautiful, talented, amazing Eliza VanCort. How are you?
I am so good, and I'm so excited to be here with you. We finally did it.
I know, this has been the 3 years.
3 years, what? Yes.
And some months in the making. And even to get to this point, it took like several months.
Yes.
To lock it. Well, we locked it in the day, but then it was like this and then that and then COVID and oh my God.
Are you free on this day? Are you free on this day? Are you free on this day? But we did it. We're here.
Yes, greetings from St. Louis. Welcome to this market.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. This is the first time I've actually gone out of the New York market, so this is new for me, so I'm so excited.
Yes, yes. So those who are new to the most amazing Eliza VanCort, she is a feminist, an author, an activist, a mentor, a speaker, a teacher, a mother, a human who has learned to raise her voice and using all these different gifts and causing them to intersect to strengthen and develop all of us, including me. I am the #1 student for tonight. But in times like these, lines between the hyperbole and reality can be easily blurred. It's refreshing to know that there are people like Eliza VanCort to help us unblur those lines. She's a student of both the performing arts and political science, and she has dedicated herself to empowering people of all experiences and backgrounds. And she is all about communication for a better world. Who are you outside of all this? Because this sounds absolutely dynamic. Who are you?
Who am I? I mean, I am a mom. I think that's one of the most important things. I love being a mother, although my kids are mostly out of the house. I have one teenager left in the house. He's 6'7" almost, and he's 17 years old. So he's already ducking through the doors, but Lucian. But I also am somebody who's been in the arts, and I've been doing things with political science my entire life. And the way that I approach my work is just combining my 2 passions, which is how does your physicality and your voice impact the way that you move in space, impact the way people receive you, but also how does the way you are in terms of how you present to other people, and I'm not just talking about your physicality and your voice, but your race, your gender, your age, your weight, how do all of those things come together to make people look at you a certain way and have you respond? And so I kind of combine those two loves and my fascination with that. And that's kind of what I do. And I love it. I feel like I have the best job ever. It's so much fun.
I'm a little jealous because I think you
well, you have a really cool job, so you know.
But that's why I wanted you to come on the show, because it's just fascinating how you take what we actually live. These are our lived experiences, but how do we show up in a stronger way, in a more confident way? And like I said earlier, I know at some point today I backed down from using my voice, and when I think about it, not only did I not say what I needed to say and speak up, but my body also communicated the same thing.
Right, right. And I think that that is really something that happens to women all the time, and particularly women of color, because the pushback is really, really extreme sometimes. And so you're always doing this cost benefit analysis. Is it worth me claiming space? And what's going to happen if I do? What will the pushback be? Wow. And so I think, women kind of have to give ourselves a break when we don't claim space like that, because we all know what happens when we do. And, yesterday, actually, I've been kind of bantering with people on Facebook today about the debate. And it was so interesting. Can I jump into that?
Please.
It was just so interesting because a lot of the people who were saying, I wished Kamala had just gone for it. Why didn't she go for it? Were white men. And I just thought to myself, wow, that's because you can, and so she just didn't she has more confidence than they do in her speech. She has the angry Black woman stereotype that she's going up against. She has all of these different things. And so she cannot do what they can do. And I thought within what she, being a Black woman, I thought she was spectacular. But of course, she has to be so much more careful, because simply not because of what she says, but because of who she is.
But don't you feel, or let me say, I'm a Black woman.
Yeah.
And I am in spaces where I need to speak up, and sometimes it's not with the majority, so that it is a more inclusive decision that's being made. And oftentimes that is real.
Yeah.
Yes, you do have an opportunity to speak up, but when I tell you, you have to watch the tone that you say it in, your body language, your nonverbals, and how you're communicating, because all that is going on at the same time. And if I speak up and not speak up in the right way, according to someone else, so now I'm diluting, now I'm whitewashing, now I'm doing all this other stuff to just even get a message out, I'm exhausted.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they've actually done research that women of color have something called, they call it the exhaustion tax or something like that, which is basically so much of their work is navigating whiteness and navigating maleness that actually that is getting in the way of their productivity. And it is not that we can't do the job. Absolutely.
It's just that we have to work before we even get to the required responsibilities.
That's right. I mean, you're doing two jobs. You're navigating those things and you're trying to do your job at the same time.
At all times.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's interesting. There's this study I read a while back, and I wish I'd brought the name of the study with me, but it was talking about leadership, and it was talking about all women as a catchphrase. I'm always a little suspect when people say all women, because obviously all women are not received the same way, but it was really interesting. And what it said was that in order to be received as a leader, men need to be something called agentic, which in psych terms just means strong and authoritative. Women need to be agentic and sensitive. They have to be right down the middle. And if they're too sensitive, then they're wimpy or they're crazy or they're hysterical. And if they're too agentic, can I say the B word on the radio?
They said that, then they're the B word.
The B word. They're the B word. I actually don't mind that word. I feel like when someone calls a woman that word, basically what they're saying is, you said your opinion. So I'm like, okay, thank you.
So I'm hearing from you that we need to shift our mindset.
For me, I just think I'm owning that word. If you're going to call me that that probably means that I had an opinion and I'm female. So I'm cool with that. And it's crazy because if you don't,
you're doomed. If you do, you're doomed. So back to, you need to do what you need to do. Don't
Right.
dial it back.
Right. And there are actually techniques that have been developed to help women communicate in a way in which they're going to be received well. So to walk that line. And, a lot of people, whenever I do this, say, well, aren't you using the tools of the master's house to try to dismantle the house? And I get that when I'm talking about this stuff, it's not fair that women have to do this, that we have to be thinking about this. But, a lot of women go in and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't in terms of their communication. And the goal for me is that everybody does it mindfully every time. It's never done by accident. You always know why you're doing it and what situation you're going into and how you're going to handle it. And there's something called high and low behaviors that this woman from Stanford developed. Her name is Deborah Grunfield, and I'm kind of have like I'm just obsessed with this woman. And
I have to look her up.
Oh my God, she's amazing. And she talks about how there are behaviors that are kind of very strong behaviors, and that basically they're a way of holding on to power or grabbing it when power's up for grabs. Or there are low playing behaviors, kind of small behaviors, hands close to the face, eyes jerking around. And those behaviors are meant to reinforce your rank as a low ranking person, or to make someone comfortable. So for example, I mentor a lot of young women.
Wait a minute, let's unpack this.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So I mentor a lot of young women. I don't know, I should have told them that I was doing this. They would have totally been listening. They're quoted in my book. We call it the Convos in the Kitchen group. And we have a little text thread that even since they left Cornell, we still are in touch. And they're all young women of color. And they would come to my kitchen. Never in a million years would I do high playing behaviors with them and say, so tell me how you're doing. I really want to hear everything that's going on because I want to help you in any way I can. They would never tell me anything, and it would be for good reason, because I'm power playing them, right? I'm going to go low. I'm going to put my hands near my face. I'm saying, tell me how you're doing, because I really am curious. So for the people who are listening, my hands are close to my face. I'm kind of jerking my hands around, looking, not making direct eye contact all the time. And that's me lowering myself a little to raise them up, right? So I'm not freaking people out, right?
Okay.
And I'm smiling. So the flip side of that is if someone's trying to intimidate you, trying to pull you down, you can use those high-playing behaviors to shut them down without saying the words that can come back to bite you. And Kamala did that last night on several occasions so beautifully. And it was just a delight to watch. It was so good.
So high-playing behaviors versus low-playing behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
This is a jewel right here.
It's a jewel.
Or for leaders to understand, again, excellence in accidents. We are communicating, we're engaging, we're including or excluding based off of this high or low play.
That's right, or a combination.
Or a combination.
So for me, I spent a lot of time in my life being very small. I had a pretty hard childhood growing up. My mother was paranoid schizophrenic. I had all kinds of unpleasantness happen. And so I really tried to make myself really invisible. And so for me, getting really small feels really uncomfortable and kind of reminds me of that time. So I have to be bigger in my body language. But the way that I can soften that is to smile. And since I'm an extrovert and I love people, yummy human beings, it's not hard for me to smile. So I kind of combine those two things, which allows me to play high with my body while still having some low playing behaviors that are rapport building.
Okay. So let's just jump into, because you just opened the door.
Yeah.
To you personally, like having walked this journey for this work. And I always say you can't lead where you've not been, and you can't give what you don't have. And so you've walked down this road, this season of life where you mentioned wanting to be invisible. And that is I know of times when I have been intentional about being invisible. But you can find yourself warring between that shrinking and trying to expand, shrinking, trying to expand. Tell us, how did you shift? Because I would never think that you were shrinking at any point just because of who you are and the energy. Like, you show up even over the phone or virtually, and the atmosphere shifts.
Makes me feel good. That's actually amazing. Thank you, because I feel the same way about you. I do. You have that wonderful energy. I think, I often hear people say they have these big events, and I don't necessarily think that's true. And I think often we count on those big events to change us. Now, I did have some big events, but they really they were built on lots of micro events. So when I was really little, my mom, who is paranoid schizophrenic, actually took me from New York to California by truck, from truck stop to truck stop to truck stop to truck stop, illegally. So there's a national APB out on me. And it happened twice. And I ended up in foster care. And I had, if you can imagine what it's like to be a 4 or 5 year old going across the country by truck with your mother who's mentally ill, nothing good can happen. Right? So I had to be very small. And I felt like if I could just be small enough, I would be safe. I had a long curtain of hair. I hid behind my hair. And I'm writing this book, as I told you, on the phone, which I'm not allowed to tell too much about the content, but I can say that one of the things in the book, it's called A Woman's Guide to Claiming Space. It's actually on pre-sale now on Amazon. A Woman's Guide to Claiming Space, Stand Tall, Raise Your Voice, Be Heard. And one of the parts of the book is the idea that when we rise together, we rise so much higher. And and it's women supporting women. And when I was really little, I think I was about 6, my father got me a big sister in the Big Sister, Big Brother program. And
on a couple of weeks ago.
It's an incredible program. And I was sitting there and I was coloring on the floor. My big sister, Alice Green, shout out to Alice, who I still am close with, came up to me and she said, oh, we can do this and we can do this and we can do this and this. And I said, I just want to color. And she sat down on the floor with me and she colored with me and she really met me where I was. And she helped me. And along the way, I had this teacher, Roberta Wallet, who, I had all of these different women in my life who sort of stepped up to raise me in many ways, and now I have this village of women in my life who are my girlfriends, who, they're my sisters. And I think that for me, all of these women who sort of, when I was afraid, said, you can do this, that really helped me. And then the other thing that helped me, which is very strange, and whenever I tell the story, people think, really? You have a lot of stuff happen to you. But I was riding my bike and a woman who was texting and driving hit me in the head with her car. And I had a subdural hematoma, bilateral brain injury, and I lost my ability to communicate well, really lost my ability to communicate. And still, when I'm tired, I sometimes stammer, which for me feels like I'm really stammering, even though most people don't notice it. I'm a little tired today. You may hear it today. And I had to build my communication back up, brick by brick by brick, and kind of go from an intuitive communicator to figuring out the component parts of communication and watching what is it that makes one person listen to and somebody else, they get ignored and they're saying the same words. And that process of doing that was, I'd say, the final thing that really pushed me into where I am now, because I started to really understand 2 things. One is the mechanics of communication, but also that you're going to mess it up, because I had to get okay with misspeaking and all of these different things that I never dealt with before, and realizing that it's actually not about that. It's about owning your space. It's not about being perfect. And so those 2 things really, really were kind of mind-blowing and changed a lot for me.
It's not about being perfect. It is about
owning your space.
Owning your space.
Yeah.
We could pack up and go right now. It is not about being perfect. It's about owning your space.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that put it in perspective.
Mm-hmm. And I think there, especially if you are from a targeted group, any misstep, and you sometimes really do, you can't misstep the way a white man can. And so there is this real fear, and it's legitimate, that you have to be perfect. But the problem is that can cripple you. That can actually make you not do what you need to do to be who you can be and your most powerful self.
Oh my gosh. There is, which I know you know what it is, but imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Imposter syndrome is where we internalize as an individual that there's an opportunity, say for instance, you get a promotion and you are now serving as a manager, but you cannot function in that role properly or to the best of your ability because you're doubting your ability, but you're also believing that you're a fraud. You think you're going to get found out, and you think you're going to not be successful, and you've not even stepped into the role just yet. Most times, this is just us internalizing, which paralyzes us from moving forward. And this is back to that communication. I know we've been talking a whole lot about communication amongst one another, but what about that communication to self?
It's so funny you say that because, without giving away the farm, one of the parts of my book is called How to Claim, it's about claiming space with yourself. And one of the ways we do that is to sort of unpack our emotional kryptonite. What is it that keeps us from being, who we are? What do we do to ourself as well? And I think that's huge. I actually, I don't know if it's okay if I share this, but I have a friend named Kim Munson-Burke. I know she wouldn't mind me saying her name at all, who came up with an exercise for imposter syndrome. And it's amazing. And I do it at all my talks. And if you want, I can tell it to you. It doesn't work forever, but it works long enough for you to get through a meeting.
Jeez, this is what we want. We want strategy.
Okay, this is thank you, Kim Munson-Burke. I can take no credit for this whatsoever. So I was nervous once. Yeah, Kim is a goddess. She is my Morpheus. I love her so much. Often when we are stressed out, and Kim works with people with trauma. And so I said to her, I'm going to use this for all my people, regardless of if they have trauma, because we always have times in our life which are our most vulnerable times, even if it hasn't been full out trauma. And when we are stressed, we tend to go back to that person, which is why we say things like, God, that person made me feel like a kid again. Or when I'm with that person, I just feel like a teenager all over again. It's because they're kind of pushing us back to our vulnerable place. And so what she told me to do, and I give this to exercise, this actually has basically destroyed my private practice, because once people do it, 90% of them are like, I'm fixed. I can now do speeches. I don't need to work with you anymore. But it's just so powerful. But basically you imagine yourself, it sounds kind of strange, but you imagine yourself walking into a ship, your adult self. And you see little you, whatever is your most scary time of your life or your most traumatized life, holding on to, how those ships have those spokes, those wheels.
Yes.
And you see little you driving the ship, and your adult and a little chair next to little you. And your adult self walks over to little you and says, I know you're really scared right now. And that's because you really can't drive this ship. But I'm an adult and I can drive this ship and I can keep us safe. So I want you to sit down here, you're safe, and I'm going to put my hands on the wheel and we're going to be fine. Because the reason that I'm here in the first place is because adult me knows how to drive the ship very well. And you put your hands on the wheel, and once you're sure you're driving, you kind of let go of the exercise. And people come in acting really young and like children, and they do this exercise and suddenly they're grown-ups again. It's so powerful, so powerful.
Back to a lot of this starting in the head, in the mind.
That's right. Exactly.
When we shift our mindset, communication, we think, it's always just blah, 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 running our mouths, talking out loud, but it starts with the thought.
Yeah.
I'm hearing you say. And that thought and everything behind that thought influences what comes out.
Absolutely. Also, you can mitigate what people do to you, but you are never in full control over that. Right? You're in control of how you respond to it.
Yes.
But you're never in control of what they do or what they think. But you are in control of yourself. So if you can sort of get your own house in order, it's much easier to navigate when people are trying to make you a kid again and not let your adult self drive the ship and try to make you small. And you say, no, adult me is in the house. I'm sorry, I'm not doing that.
But that's a whole nother space. It seems like we keep going back to this also space of vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And we're not trying to go there all the time.
Yeah, it's hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to be vulnerable for sure.
And it seems like, but back to the mindset, once we realize that is not a place of weakness. Mm-mm. It's just a place, I think, of truth. Like that's a reality in some cases, well, most cases. So if this is a reality, the reality is I am feeling a certain way at
Mhm.
this point, and that is my truth. But as you said, what has brought me to that point, but in my mind, shifting that to where the adult me, because oftentimes we will question things. Well, I can't say we, I,
Oh,
I
say we, please.
we,
I
I,
feel by myself.
we will question things like opportunities, and these are opportunities we've prepared for.
Mhm.
But once we arrive at that place, it's kind of like, back to that self-talk, do I deserve this? Am I ready for this? Am I prepared for this? And it's like, yeah.
Yeah, and I also, it's funny. I was just talking to somebody today. Hopefully he's listening. I'm not going to say his name because he might not want me to tell his story. But we were talking about how he has an accent. He's from India, and how he's interested in doing blogs. And he said he didn't like the way he talks. And I said, actually, your voice is amazing. I think maybe you might be insecure about your accent. And he said, absolutely. I think that might be part of it. And we had a conversation, and I said, you don't actually, he's like, so I just want to wait till I feel more confident to do this. And I said, you don't really have to, because most successful people are not thinking they have their act together all the time. Most successful people are scared and doing it anyway, you know?
Honestly, that is there is a mentor, a sponsor, a spiritual mom that I have here in the St. Louis region, and Dr. Billy Mayo.
Mm-hmm.
And she walked behind me one day and she said, may I place my hands here, which was, on my belly. And she's like, push through. You got to push through. And she's like, you're there, but you're holding yourself back. And she was like, but what I'm going to tell you is that, okay, you may be feeling some kind of way, but I need you to do it afraid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whatever it is, it's always going to be more. The higher you go, the more you risk yourself, take risk on yourself, and you bet on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Those emotions are going to come, but acknowledge them, but do it afraid.
That's right.
And she said, if not you, who? If not now, when?
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, so I have to repeat that to myself, back to mindset, and
Mm-hmm.
shifting those thoughts in the mind. It's so funny how we started off talking about communicating to others, but now we're shifting inward.
But I think a lot of good communicators know how to communicate with themselves first.
Interesting.
Until you can communicate with yourself, there's no way you're going to communicate well with other people. And I think what you're talking about in terms of fear, I've always say to people, the day I do a talk, the day I do something like this, the day I teach, and I don't feel nervous before I do it, I'm quitting, because that means I don't care anymore. So when I'm nervous, I just think, well, okay, this is something worth doing. And my emotional life is saying this is important to me. Okay, hey, what's up, fear? How you doing? I'm now scared. It actually won't kill me, and I try to do the thing. Not that I don't. And I think actually when people say bravery and they think about some dude like running on a field, and he's like, oh, I'm not afraid. I always think that's insane. Like, why would you not be afraid to run on a field with a sword in your hand? That's crazy. I'm sure that person's afraid, and that is true bravery: being scared and doing it anyway.
Wow. Wow. Now you have some other strategies that I believe you've worked with when it comes to the performing arts.
Mm-hmm.
And what kinds of things could you share with us when it comes to, because I think we all are performers. Every day when we slide out that bed and our feet hit the floor, we are on.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't get a chance to a redo often.
There's a play called The Mulligan, which is when I never knew. I know nothing about golf, but I realized that mulligan is a do-over. And there's times in life I definitely am like, I want a do-over. Where's my mulligan? But we don't get one.
Yes. So I think, and I had the opportunity while in college to take a acting one-on-one. The instructor, she's a actress herself, Susie Walls. She does a lot of live entertainment, live plays, live production. And there were so many things that we did that were so out of the expectation of
Mm-hmm.
what this acting one-on-one class would be. But when I tell you I still use some of the strategies that she shared,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, it's just like, really, who knew? So what are some things that you share in your class with your students? Give us one strategy.
It's really interesting because I teach something called the Sanford-Meisner technique. I'm actually in my green room right now.
I know,
Uh,
and I'm loving the backgrounds.
when people graduate from our program, they sign this wall. So it's like my happy place. There's another one on the other side of the room they sign as well. And shout out to my AWI community. And Katie and David, my sister Katie Spallone and David Kosak, our instructors. And we just have an amazing group of people. It's really a bummer beyond a bummer that COVID has put us on hold. But I mean, the technique does a lot of things. The first thing it does is actually teach you how to get in touch with your gut. And I think that is so important. And the way that I describe it to people is, you're walking down the street and somebody gives you a bad look and you fly up into you have this guttural reaction. You're like, it's an ouch. You go in your head and then you say, I don't know that person, forget them. And then you say, it's okay, gut. And then your gut goes, phew, you keep walking. And it happens so fast that you don't even know that the sequence is happening, but it absolutely is happening. What this technique does first and foremost is teach you to identify the feeling of what that guttural reaction is. Know what your feelings are, and they've actually done all this research on this, that people always say, you shouldn't be emotional, but actually people who are in touch with their emotions are much more in control. It's about, because they're conscious of what they're thinking, they're not reactive to those emotions because they know what they are. So really you're trying to not be reactive rather than emotional. You want to be emotional. So, and I always say, you want to be unemotional, but so we teach people that. We also teach people emotional preparation, which is basically how to get in a certain mental state. But I think the thing that is most useful for women who are leaders is physicality and voice. And that is, how do you move your body in space? So actors can find a character just by moving something in their body, and then it changes their entire physicality. So I always have a joke, I wish people could see me, but I'm putting up one finger and I'm wiggling it. And I always say, I can wiggle this one finger, and if it doesn't do anything, then it's a dumb adjustment and I shouldn't do it. But if I wiggle this one finger and then I'm just like, oh, hey friend, it changes everything. Suddenly I'm a different person. So if you are, for example, slumping over, if you don't have your chest kind of open rather than collapsed, if you're not using your voice properly, if you are collapsing in on yourself in terms of your legs or your hands, all of those things are going to affect how people perceive you, and in turn how you perceive yourself. And a great example of this is my deceased teacher, Phil Gushie, God rest his soul, amazing man, told a story of knowing somebody who did the Hunchback of Notre Dame in New York. And he put a big hump on his back and walked through all of New York and looked at people. And by the end of the day, he was miserable and hated himself because of the way people were treating him. And so that's an extreme example of what our physicality and voice can do and how it impacts us, and how important it is for us to be aware that we're sitting in our power with our bodies and our voices, not just our emotional state.
Very interesting. You said so much good stuff in there, but I know it is very important even when you're communicating with other people, especially now when we're doing so much virtually. I think it's even that much more important to know posture.
Mm-hmm.
As you mentioned, I love how you said that, you can wiggle the finger and it's just wiggling the finger. But if you wiggle the finger and you put in now this little voice and you go into this little character, not only is it a different feeling for you, but it's a different experience. You transformed me into something different just for a moment, because it was like, oh, we're going to do puppets, or it's time to laugh right now. Like it's just that quick.
Yeah.
So now I'm sitting here thinking like, wow. So if I show up and I'm talking low and I'm like, oh, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing okay. How are you doing? And I'm like sitting with my shoulders humped over, because if you notice, like even while we're sitting here looking at each other, I keep doing this.
Yeah, me too.
Because I have the habit of that whole, I close off.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize how much because by you continuing to talk, I keep trying to open up.
Yeah.
But it is a different experience. I feel different. Like I'm more, like I'm ready to just jump in.
Absolutely. And actually your vocal cords are affected by slumping, because you have these things called false and true vocal folds in your vocal box. And if you are slumped over, your false vocal folds will like get constricted by your true vocal folds. In basic language, what this means is you're basically compressing your vocal box. And so your vocal cords can't vibrate properly. So that's why singers are always standing up straight. It's because they're vibrating their vocal cords properly.
And sitting on the very edge of the seats.
Which is what I'm doing right now. I'm actually on a stool on the very, you probably won't see it, but I am, now you know I'm wearing jeans, y'all. But that's exactly right. Yeah.
Because I've learned it's funny, you're taking more seriously, but you take yourself more seriously because of being, I don't know, it's just you're more aware, you're more engaged, you're more alert, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people will treat you better and you'll be treated differently, and so it just becomes this sort of cycle. And I do think to a certain extent, I mean, this is not always true because you are, colliding into isms, but to a certain extent, you are like all day long, you're just colliding into navigating isms. But I also think that for, the other side of that is that to a certain extent, people will treat you as well as you tell them to treat you. And so if you are telling them with your body and voice that you expect to be treated well, the probability of you being treated well will go up. Now, of course, different people have more barriers to that going up, but everybody will raise their probability, no matter who they are, just by saying with their body and their voice and the way they're talking, I respect myself and I expect that you will respect me as well.
Wow. Now, this is a time, we've got a number of things going on in the world. One thing that is, even during this month, but although it's to me not a month, and to you I know the same, when we talk about diversity and inclusion and this whole idea of inclusion, and when it comes to using your voice, speaking up, being heard in the workplace, there's this dual role push-pull dynamic that goes on between two individuals. And let's just take the leaders of companies versus those who report to those leaders. And when we're talking about our voice, oftentimes there's a whole lot of research, and then there's a couple articles that I've pulled just to kind of add another voice to the conversation. Inc.com had an article about why employees don't speak up in the workplace. And so they list 5 reasons: and fear of retaliation or looking stupid, appearance of challenging authority, previous bad experiences, unskilled with practical candor, your door isn't really open. So these are 5 different ways reasons that impact employees in the workplace, which then leads to people feeling excluded.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. When I read stuff like that, I get a little annoyed because I kind of feel like they're putting the onus on the people who are having the trouble rather than, when I hear that, I think, okay, so why is this person afraid of retaliation? Every single one of those things, I think, well, what has happened to them historically that is making them believe this? Because it is very likely that they have a good reason to fear those things. So for me, I, as a white woman, if I'm trying to navigate my whiteness, because, obviously intersectional feminism is to me incredibly important. I'm not thinking when I'm talking to a Black woman, what is she doing wrong in her communication? If there's some sort of gap, usually it's often something that I'm doing, some sort of privilege that I'm rocking that I don't know that I'm rocking. And I actually think the onus is upon the person in power to reflect on why the communication isn't going well first. And I honestly think if that happened, what you just read would not be necessary. because I think most of it has to do with power dynamics. And let's face it, still in this country, white people are overwhelmingly in power, men are overwhelmingly in power. And when you grow up and you are steeped in that level of privilege all the time, you don't know you have it. And so you're simply rocking it all the time, and you're not trying to be mean. And that's what I always try to tell people. I am not saying people are trying to be mean. In fact, I think most people really want to be kind, but the reality is the impact is what matters. It doesn't really matter what's in your heart. It's the impact.
Intent versus impact.
That's right.
Two separate things.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is good because I know a number of people, like both of us, talk to corporations, we talk to leaders in
Mm-hmm.
regards to navigating this space.
Mm-hmm.
And what would be some like recommendations for leaders, you know, just maybe one or two that come to your mind when it comes to being more inclusive, to make sure that there isn't the load being passed off
Mm-hmm.
on those who report leaders, to make sure that they are feeling included and they can actually use their voice. Now, we've had all these strategies we've talked about, we've got to use them somewhere, right?
Right. I mean, I think, you know, it's funny. I did go through quite a journey on race, and I have some friends that I was friends with prior to kind of, I don't believe in being woke. I think it's a ridiculous idea because that kind of says like, I'm done now. Like I say woking, but before I started like my woking process, you know, I now have friends that are like, yeah, I didn't tell you everything because you were untrustworthy. You had the right, you know, your heart was in the right place, but you were untrustworthy. And now they're talking much more openly with me, and they'll check me more because I'm safe to check. You know, so I think the first thing why people have to understand is just because it seems like everything's okay, doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing everything okay. You know, and so what you have to learn to do is listen, ask questions, listen, and then believe people. That's so simple, but it's so important. Believe that you can be living in the same world as someone and living a completely different experience. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Oh no, amen. I'm just amening you because the work is heavy. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes individuals, when we're talking about this, speaking up, making sure people are included, they want it to happen today. And it doesn't happen today. It takes time because, as you mentioned, you don't even realize the spaces of privilege that you're able to navigate through, that if I, even today at this point in my career and in my life, if I showed up and did some of the things that my president did,
right,
I would not be in a job.
Mm-hmm.
With an employer. And not only with that employer, the way things work now, with no employer, probably, I would
right.
have, because things travel so fast. But some people, when you don't have to tread in certain spaces and you have a choice not to, you don't realize.
Exactly.
Like, this is what you're dealing with. So I love when you said, you know, you're listening, but you said also believe. Because I think that's the other component that is not explored. And there's no accountability in the space for that. Not enough, I will say, because we think like, oh, they're just, you know, they're just, you know, like you're just saying that. No. Like you said, that list I read in regards to why people aren't speaking up, that comes down to culture, and who sets the tone for culture?
Mm-hmm. Right. That's right. Yeah, I mean, my friend, Dr. Nia Nunn, who is absolutely incredible, amazing genius of a woman, she studies education and the intersection of education and race, does a lot of work with Black Girl Magic and all of these different things. She's incredible. And she talks about the process white people go through when they start to understand race as the same thing children go through when they discover letters. She calls it discovering letters, that, you know, at first you're living in a world and you're looking around and there are all these letters around you and you have no idea they're letters. They're literally squiggles. You have no idea. And then one day you're like, no, that's an S, that's an R. What? I've been in front of these whole time and I didn't even see it, you know? And then you start going to your parents and say, S, S, S in the car. And they're like, yes, honey, I know. Similar to like Black people, you know, as you're going through this process, you're like, do you know there's racism? And your Black friend's like, yes, I did know that actually, you know? And so you go through this whole process. And I think what they found is actually why people go through a process is similar to a death, because they realize that the world they were living in is not the actual world. And so they go through stages of grief as if something died because their reality is dying, and not that they can ever quite, and there's a lot of self-pity that goes into that, which can be obnoxious because you're like, I'm so sad for others that others have this problem, you know, but you do go through all of these different stages. And I think what, you know, the number one thing that people need to understand is unless you are making a concerted effort to put yourself in a position that's going to make you sad and feel bad as a white person, because you're going to have to realize that you get stuff for being alive that other people don't get. Unless you put yourself there, you are not seeing the whole picture, and you are not going to lead as well because you will not optimize the talent that you have. And ultimately, you know, inclusion, if you just want to be Machiavellian about it, anti-racist work is going to actually make for a more productive workplace because we won't have people navigating these isms. You know, it makes everyone better.
But yet we argue and follow this trend in the hashtag of, you know, be authentic, authenticity, bring your best self, bring your whole self. And how you can't do that if you have all these other isms colliding, as you say, that we're colliding into, and back to the covering, and back to the imposter syndrome, and back to like all of this that we are carrying on our shoulders just to show up to work.
Mm-hmm. There's a profound privilege in sharing your feelings. Profound. Can you imagine saying whatever you wanted, whenever you wanted? I can't even imagine, I can't even wrap my mind around doing that. You know, I know we're close to the end, but do I have time to tell you a quick story? Like, this is my favorite story on that. I'm sitting around a table. My friend Kim is there, the one who does the imposter syndrome thing. And it's mostly Black and brown people and some white women and then 2 white men. And the white man, there's a white man at the table and he's saying, and we're talking about words. Certain people want to be called non-binary and all these different words, and it's African-American, then it's Black. And he's like, I don't understand why I have to worry about these words so much. There's so much to think about. And Kim, you know, she does this thing where she spreads out when she's mad. She puts her hand out. She goes, I got to stop you right there. And she goes, all of us, yeah. She goes, all of us spend our day navigating around you. Every moment of our day, we are thinking about how we are going to accommodate you. And now we are asking you not to say a couple of words and you're having a hard time with that. I think maybe you should examine that. Boom.
But she spoke up.
That's right.
As you said, not perfect, but owned the space. And she owned the space and corrected a situation that could have gone a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's a responsibility, I feel. You have to.
What next for you? What's next on the horizon?
Well, I am rebuilding my business after COVID because I was all over the world and then suddenly academia shut down outside contracting. So I'm suddenly doing more corporate gigs. I have 2 big talks, one on communication and one on anti-racist communication specifically. And so I'm doing more work remotely. I am also gearing up for my book launch, May 11th. My book is going to drop and it's on pre-sale on Amazon.
What day is it being released?
I don't know. I think I forgot to say that it's May 11th. But all the books that you buy beforehand actually count toward the bestseller list for that first week. So if you're going to buy a book, buy it now. But it's really, I think it's an excellent book. And I think it's great for people who want to claim their space. It's also great for people to learn about experiences that maybe you've never had. So I think it's a really important book, and it's, you know, it's inspired by conversations in the bathroom I have after my talks when women say, I didn't want to say this out loud, but here's my question. And and now I'm like, let's put these in the sunlight. Let's talk about these things. So.
Oh my gosh, that little nugget I did not know.
Yeah. I almost called the book Conversations in the Bathroom.
Conversations in the bathroom. I know me and my sister friends will say meeting in the ladies' room.
Totally. It's a magic place, the bathroom.
Yes.
You say stuff to people you would never say anywhere else.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing. So I know you have you have we're preparing for the book. I definitely want you to come back and share a little bit more when that comes. Maybe we can even have individuals, you know, we'll kind of come together and create something around that so we can celebrate with you here from the Midwest. And also, one thing I did want you to touch on was really briefly, you being an entrepreneur and having to shift. How has communication shifted for you in that space? Because now we're talking about navigating everything virtually to where we oftentimes, you know, the language is, if I can just get a meeting with this person, I can just get on their calendar and get it face to face with them, I can sell them. Well, now we're having to come up with a different type of formula. What has been one of your tricks? Well, not tricks. What's your strategy?
I mean, to me, it's all about relationships.
Okay.
All about relationships, and the relationships that, you know, as I said, you know, you can't, I say in the book, you can't claim space with a one-woman army. You know, it's all about my sisters and some men I know as well. I have to give credit. You know, people have referred me to people, and I think really it's so important to help people, because when you're in trouble, people will help you. And I think that's so, you know, this idea and mentality of service is so important. And if you want to know about the mechanics of remote communication, I actually have a YouTube channel, and I have a whole thing on remote communication. And if, you know, how to buy even certain technologies for cheap in the notes. So if people want to look at that, it's pretty useful. It's a lot of information. I did it in my kitchen just on a whim. So it's pretty raw, but it's pretty accurate.
No, but that's the beauty of, what did you say? Not perfect. Not
perfect. No, girl's not perfect. It's not perfect.
I'm telling you, you're freeing us today. Not perfect. Just own your space.
Yeah. Well, you do that so well. I mean, the second we talked, I was like, I want to be her friend.
No, I was saying the same. So as you prepare for this next and all the different things that you have shared with us, and then I know there's a few other little surprises that are bubbling up, what's keeping you up at night?
Oh, I mean, I'll be honest, the election, you know, I mean, truly, that's what's keeping me up at night. I think we needed an administration change. I don't know if I'm allowed to say politics on this show, but for me, we have a president that wouldn't condemn white supremacy. To me, that's, you put a cork in it and that's the end of it. You know, he has harmed our country. We have more than 200,000 people dead, and it's impacting poor people. It's impacting brown and black people more. And, you know, I have a friend who lives in the Bronx, lost 15 people. She tells her story on my YouTube site as well. And 15 people. And, you know, because you couldn't have access to care, and here he is with the best care in the world. And so for me, you know, someone said to me, well, Joe Biden isn't perfect. And I said, there's a funny TikTok. My daughter got me addicted to TikTok, where like this person literally says, today on the menu, we have rat poisoning and a tuna melt. And this person's like, I don't know about the tuna melt. I don't know if I like the tuna melt. And I'm like, get the damn tuna melt.
What brand is the tuna melt, right?
The other one is poison. Get the tuna melt. So everybody needs to go for the tuna melt. You know, even if you're not thrilled with the tuna melt, vote for the vote. Every vote matters, and people are going to try to suppress your vote. Do not let your vote be suppressed. Stand in line all day if you have to.
That is your voice, right?
That's our voice. Talk about claiming space.
Right. Now, on the flip side of this, what's making you smile?
You know, I think what's making me smile is the next generation. The way they activated after George Floyd was so impressive. I actually said to my daughter, who's done a lot of anti-racist work herself, and we never even talked about that, but she's an extraordinary young woman. And, you know, I said, you know, I have to admit, I thought you guys were still on your phones playing games, but you guys activated like that after George Floyd. And they're doing all kinds of mischief too, great mischief, I think, whereas like not that I'm condemning this, but, you know, they bought up all the seats in the first Trump rally. They said on TikTok, hey, everybody reserve a seat, and then don't show. And that's why he had an empty audience. And that was the young people. I mean, they are figuring out how to fight back, and they're having their own, and they are the most inclusive group. They are the most progressive group, and they are the most racially unified group. Not to say everyone is, But I have real hope. I have real hope that the next generation, if we can just stop climate change and get through this very dark nightmare we're in, is going to really make a transformative difference in our world. And that makes me feel deep, deep joy, deep joy.
What one word is keeping you going?
Determination. But I think also hope. I had to do too, hope. I think you have to stay hopeful. The day you lose your hope is the day you stop fighting.
Wonderful. So you have this platform to communicate one message to the world about speaking up, about communication, whatever angle you want to take it. But what one message would you tell the world in the nick of time to help them?
I think it is claim space, and then turn around, reach your hand out behind you, and pull up the people behind you. As you know, so turn around, hold on to the hands of your sisters and pull them up with you, because unless we as women claim space together, we are never going to rise the way we need to. We have to claim space together. And if any of us are left behind, all of us suffer.
Wow. Absolutely amazing. Eliza VanCort, who is from New York, joining us. We are just honored to have you on this platform. Those who want to learn more, I'm going to post information in regards to where you can find the YouTube channel, information to go ahead and get that pre-sale for the upcoming book. And also just to follow her on social media, especially on LinkedIn, a lot of great articles, a lot of insight. I love how you challenge our thinking, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with this region. And thank you. Thank you so much for trusting this platform. The website, we can go ahead and give that out, Eliza, E-L-I-Z-A, VanCort, VanCort.com.
Yep, there's no you in court. Everybody puts a you in there, no you. Just like you said it.
I will also post that. Thank you so much. I am looking forward to all that God has for you in this next season. There is so much bubbling up behind the scene, and I'm telling you, I'm holding you up from all the way from the Midwest. The work that you're doing is phenomenal. We need you. We need the work. We need your voice. We need your voice to help us get our voice stronger. And I thank you for the little bit that you've done, even for me from the distance. I am most appreciative.
Well, I am deeply honored to be on your show. I love the work you're doing. And when you asked me, I didn't know. You didn't have to ask me twice. So I feel the same way about you. You're doing such exceptional work, and I'm really in awe of it, truly. And I'm just so honored that you trusted me with your space, really.
Yes. Thank you. Until next time, I want all of you to just understand how much we appreciate you joining us. You could be doing anything in the world, but you pressed pause to join us for another conversation in the nick of time. I am your host, Nikki Roach, show powered by Sparkman Pathway to Careers and KSTL 690 AM in the STL. Want you to go and be good, be great, understand that you already possess everything you need to be successful. Just want you to engage your head, heart, and hand and live out success as you define it, not as the world. Just consider you already have it. Go and be a blessing.